Welcome to another week of discussing Kids Deserve It. We are on chapter 21 this week. Thrilled to have a lot of people in today again. People that I recognize too. I'm seeing some friends join in. Always love to start this with having you comment on where you're from. So if you can tell me, hey, Nicole from Florida. Great to have you, Nicole. And Roman from Canada, my buddy. Good to have some people on here. And another Florida. That's awesome. I'll get started in just a second. Oh, great. Hello. And Hogan from College Station. And my man Eli from New Mexico. Awesome. Maryland, South Carolina. Love it. Love seeing that people are listening from all over the United States. Thank you for joining in again for another week of Kids Deserve It discussion. I'm trying this from an iPad now instead of my typical phone, so we'll see how well I can hold this and get this going. This week is discussing chapter 21, which is all about choices and decisions. I really love two of the examples that I share in this chapter, as well as what Adam shares. So I'm excited to talk about this week's chapter. Thank you also for joining in when I know many of you are on holiday break right now. And so I hope you are also taking some time for you and spending some time with family or relaxing or doing whatever. I know for the last 2 days, I've done a bunch of nothing except for watch movies and stuff. So it's been nice. Anyway. This chapter has one of our favorite quotes from Adam and I, and that one is, schools don't exist so that we can have jobs. Schools exist for students. And, you know, that's kind of been the defining mantra for myself as well as Adam, is making sure that as we talk about schools and building things with schools and everything like that, that we always remember that we don't always want to do what's easiest and best for us as adults. We need to always do what's best for kids. And when I think about some decisions that I've made as a campus principal, that's one of the things I constantly go back to, is when there is pushback or when there is really contemplation on, should we be doing this? The first question I always ask is, okay, is your problem with what we're going to do? Is your problem that it makes the job harder for you, or that it's worse for the kids? Because I know one of the biggest examples of that for me, and this isn't in the chapter, but is when we were having kids get in the lunch line, and a couple of teachers had said, you know what, I really think they should be quiet in the lunch line, so it kind of sets the standard of that we want them to be well behaved and everything whenever they get to the cafeteria tables. And I thought, oh, that makes perfect sense. Okay, yeah, we'll make them be quiet in the lunch line. And then I stopped and I thought, well, why do we really want them to be quiet in the lunch line? Because, you know, the lunch is one of the biggest times that they have to talk outside of the classroom, lunch and recess. And so are we making them be quiet because it's what's best for them? Or are we making them be quiet because it's easier for us to do our job? And when I stopped about it and reflect about it on that element, I knew that the only reason we were asking them to be quiet is to make our jobs easier as we do lunch duty. So we don't have to have as loud or as much talk or anything like that. And I thought, well, that's not what's best for kids. And so now we let them talk in the lunch line. Just like how we rearranged our lunch tables. Our lunch tables used to be all in rows and looked very institutionalized. And this year I said, you know what? I want to change it up. I want to reorganize them. I want them to be different rows, different shapes, different sizes. I want all that to be different. And yes, it's going to take a little bit of training on the kids' behalf of how to walk and where to go and who's going to sit where. I said, but in the end, this is going to be better for kids because this is what they need. They need to be in somewhere that doesn't feel like such an institution. Sit in line, sit in quiet, be quiet, get in your row. No, let's give them a little bit of space, opportunity to do different things. And I think that's why it's really important that when we have issues with things that people are asking us to do, to always stop and think, is this what's best for kids? Or is this what's best for adults? And many times the decisions we make in a school are what's best for adults. So we just got to keep that in mind. But two of the stories that I want to talk about are the two stories that I share in this book. And one of them is Crash Course Day, one of my favorite things we have done as a campus. We read Kim Bearden's book, Crash Course, Lessons I Learned from My Students, one of the most fantastic books you can ever read as an educator. It made me laugh, it made me cry. Kim is a great friend of mine, and I absolutely adore her. And see, somebody else on here has read her book and loves her as well. But that book, you know, I had it for about 4 months before I had a chance to read it, and I read it on an airplane, which was a mistake because I bawled my eyes out through half of the book because it was just such an emotional, real, honest storytelling, which kind of was one of the reasons why I wrote Kids Deserve It the way I wanted to write it, which is sharing my heart and sharing those stories too, was thanks to Kim. And so I read the book on a plane during the summer, and I thought, this is what we have to have as our staff book study. I contacted Kim's publisher, bought a copy for every single staff member, and we took it and we read it. And when we started reading it,
I said, you know what, we're going to talk every week about a chapter. Her chapters are short, just like Kids Deserve It, so they'll be easy to read and talk about. We'll take 15, 20 minutes. And then I said, you know what, we'll be done with her book by November 15th. Or 16th. And I said, you know, what I want you to do is I want you, as we read this, think about one thing you can take from her book. And I want you to implement it on this November the 15th day, because that's going to be our crash course day. We're all going to take something and do it. And a lot of teachers were planning classroom transformations and experiences for kids, things like that. And so about halfway through, Kim contacted me and she said, oh my gosh, Todd, I love what I'm seeing your teachers do. You know, nobody's ever really all read my book before like this and shared it out on social media. And then on top of it all, planned a crash course day. She's like, so I want to do something special for them. She's like, can I fly up and surprise them? And I was like, yeah. I mean, there's no way I would say no to that. And so I said, she goes, but I want it to be a surprise to the staff. And I said, okay, I'll keep it a surprise. Well, then about 2 or 3 weeks out, I could tell my staff was getting really excited about this crash course day. And you got to understand, with my staff, Kim is like Oprah to them. And I knew that if Kim just showed up one day randomly, they was going to be crying and falling out and all this other stuff. So I was like, I have to give them a heads up. So I told Kim, I was like, Kim, we need to give them a heads up. And she said, okay, I've got an idea. Let me make this video. So she made a video, and on our last book study day, about a week or two before, I played it. And it said, you know, thank you guys so much for reading my book. It means so much to me. I can't even express to you. She goes, but you know what? This is so informal through a video. I need to come down and show you in person. So I'm going to come down on your crash course day. And oh my gosh, there was screaming. There was crying. People fell out of their chairs. I had stuff thrown at me because I had kept it a secret. It was hilarious. But it was so amazing. When Kim did come and spend a day with my staff, and you know, just to have somebody that we really look up to in education and that really inspires us to spend a day with us from this tiny town in Texas with these kids that we're working so hard to change their lives, and for her to come around and for her to be in tears and take photos and tweet and then after school spend time with my teachers. It is one of those moments that I will truly never forget. And Kim is a great friend of mine, and I've expressed to her many times just how powerful that day was for her to come and do that. But it definitely taught my staff to the power of social media. And when you share our stories, anything can happen. And it was just so great, too, for the kids to have those transformations and all those experiences that day. Let me tell you, that was the one day with no discipline. But it was also the day that we left 100% exhausted because nothing was left on the table. I mean, we put it all out there. And it was just such a neat experience, and that's one of those things that I look at and think, you know, that's why we do what we do. We do those experiences and offer those opportunities for our kids, but sometimes they reward us as educators even more than they reward the kids. The other story in the chapter that I wrote was the one about the math fair. Now, the math fair is something that I did as a classroom teacher. I haven't done it yet as a principal, but my goal is this year. And with the math fair, you know, I've always seen those teachers who were doing these great science fairs and stuff. And I thought, you know what? I want to do something like that with math, because, I mean, math is cool too sometimes, and I really wanted to provide a way for the kids to see that math is in everything, and math is important. And so what happened was, I thought, you know what, let me do a math fair. Let me see if I can organize something where the kids can explore whatever they're passionate about and take and do that. And so I came with this idea of the math fair, and it was 6 weeks that we had to plan it because we were a fully project-based classroom at this time as well. And so the first 2 weeks they had to pick their topic, and it could be any topic they wanted to pick. But they picked their topic, but it had to be something they were passionate about. Now, I had 75 students, so it was important to do this for 2 weeks because if somebody picked basketball, basketball was off the table. Nobody else could choose it. And so every kid had to have something different. And this was for my 5th graders. Thanks for asking that, magnetic_D. And so I thought, you know what? Okay, after we do that, we have 4 weeks for them to work on it at home. And the only rules that I gave them was that they had to find at least 3 ways that math was involved in their passion, and they had to present on it. And so they had to present for 1.5 minutes, and they had to have, 6 ways, 6 ways math was involved in their passion, but they had to have 3 visuals. And I used the term visuals purposely because I didn't want them to just create a trifold. Now, many of them did because math fair, science fair, that kind of thing, but I didn't just want that to be the case. And so with the math fair, when we practiced their presentations about a couple days before the event, but I did not allow them to bring their visuals to class. I told them I wanted them to blow my mind, but I wanted to be surprised the night of. And so that night, it was an hour and a half in the evening, 75 students, very rural community. My principal said, you cannot make this mandatory. I said, watch me, because I listen so well. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to make it mandatory. She goes, well, when a parent calls and says they can't be there, I'm going to tell them that that's okay. And I said, that's fine. I said, but I'm going to make it very clear to the kids that I want them all there. I had 73 of my 75 students there. And the two that didn't show up, one's parent didn't get off of work till really late, and the other one ran out of gas money and couldn't be there. And so they were very upset. But at the night of the math fair, I got to tell you, I've never been in a room full of kids and been that emotionally overwhelmed by them because of their pride of something that they were doing that had absolutely no grade attached. And for an hour and a half, I got to be surrounded by the brilliance of fifth graders, of 10 and 11-year-olds. Kids who chose projects that blew my mind. I had a kid choose drag racing, and he brought his dad's drag racing car in the parking lot. And if you came to his station, you got to sit in the seat and rev the engine. I had a girl who chose softball, and she brought her coach, and they pitched softballs and talked about the math involved with softballs. I had a girl choose barrel racing, and she brought her horse and barrels, and in the field back behind the school, taught barrel racing and the math involved with barrel racing. I had kids choose everything from skydiving to Angry Birds to The Walking Dead to macaroni and cheese. I mean, it was just fantastic. To get to watch them get to share their passions. And so, the first year I did it, it was great. That school that I was at the time had typically about 100 or so parents that would show up for events. Well, for our math fair, we had over 250 parents and family members show up because the kids wanted people there and they were begging them to come. In the second year, I live streamed it so that we could have parents who couldn't be there still get to experience the math fair. But I remember too blogging about it, and I wrote about this in the book too. And I remember blogging about it, and then somebody from up north said, this looks awesome, but it's clear that your kids are really wealthy, and most of their parents did the work for them. And I went back and I looked at the blog, and I looked at some of the photos, and I thought, you know what? It really does look like the parents did a lot of the work in these. But I know the kids, and I know they did it too. I said, but then I noticed two ones, and I pulled the kids aside, and they're both girls. And I said, you chose Precision Urethane, and you chose the lumber company that your parents work for. Now, I know you don't care about either one of those, so why would you choose those? And I will forever remember what that little girl said to me. She looked me right in the eyes, and she said, I knew the only way to get my mom to spend time with me was to choose the company that she worked for. And when I heard that, it not only did it just break my heart, but at the same time, it reminded me that what we do as educators is so much more than teach the content. And I don't care if that mom sat there and did every single thing for that little girl. I guarantee you that girl stayed with her the whole time. And, that girl had to present for an hour and a half. Her mom couldn't do that for her. And so it didn't even bother me that the parent may have done everything because they really couldn't do it all. But it was one of those things that as a teacher, those are moments that I'm most proud of, is getting to have those moments where you can say, you know what, I did so much more than teach the content. I got to give them experiences that hopefully they won't ever forget. And you know what, that may be the only time that little girl got quality time with her parent. And if that was it, then maybe I've really done my job right. And so when I think about this chapter and think about how we have choices and decisions as educators, and it really doesn't matter what your role is in education. We all have those choices and those decisions. And we can choose to focus on ourselves, or we can choose to focus on the kids. And I know for me, as a campus administrator now, that's where I really try to put my focus on is the decisions I'm making, are they going to be what's best for these kids? Because I have to take me out of the equation. Now, as an administrator, I do have to take my teachers into context too and think about them and the rest of the staff, and is this going to be overwhelming their plates or putting too much on them? But I also have to think of my kids first. And I always tell my team, whenever I have an idea or want to try something, if you don't think it's a good idea, please let me know. But remember, I'm going to ask you, is this best for kids? Because if it's best for kids, we're going to do it no matter what it takes. And just like Kids Deserve It talks about all the time, we're not going to make any excuses on why we can't do something. Funding will never be an excuse. We don't have the help will never be an excuse. The kids won't want to do it. The parents will hate it. No. If it's what's best for kids, we're going to figure it out. And you know what? We figured it out every single time. May not have been perfect, but we figured out how to make it work. So I think that what's important when you think about this chapter is, how are you going to leave your mark as an educator? And you got to take input from the kids. You got to take input from the parents. And you got to look at whatever you can do to inspire them, to challenge them, to push them how farther than they ever could have imagined they could go. I talk to teachers all the time about working in especially in environments where kids are already coming from rough homes. I've talked a lot with my good friend Eli, who is a teacher in New Mexico, and talking to him about, we have kids that come from very difficult backgrounds where kids get shot on the street or families are abandoned or things like that. And it's like, not only do as educators do we have to provide educational things, but we also have to provide them hope. And we have to provide them a place where they feel appreciated, where they feel valued, and where they feel loved. And when you work in a school sometimes that the different people around you or different people around the state, all they look at is test scores, and they want to look at that, they sometimes forget that our kids are so much more than that. And I want to be a school who helps them find academic success, but also helps them find emotional success, and helps them find ways that they can be the best that they have ever even dreamed they were capable of being. And so I hope that you also provide great learning opportunities for your kids. Hope that you join our chat tonight at 8 o'clock, where we get to share some of those ideas and resources. And if you're doing some other things, I would love to see you share them on social media using the Kids Deserve It hashtag as well. Hope everybody has a great evening, and I'll see you next week.